Was Naso talking about the Sota woman that was secluded. I wanted to talk about the laws of Yichud. A lot of people don't know it. Actually, Shavuot night, I gave a whole shir about this, almost 2 hours, and people were very interested. I wanted to bring out 2-3 different issues. I just wanted to give an introduction. What does Yichud mean? Any woman that it's forbidden to have sexual relation with, it's forbidden to be secluded with her in a private area. Now, the majority of this shir is going to be about, let's say, God forbid, you have the flu or you have COVID, you have to be alone, and there's a housekeeper in the house or your mother-in-law. So then there's ways of preventing it if you open the door or open the window, or people could come in or put a camera. But just we want to go from the basic and then go deeper. So the Shulchan Aruch states very clearly, it doesn't matter if the woman, how old she is or how young she is.
Really?
I mean, we're going to see in the poskim, obviously, girls that are under 3 is not a problem. But then babysitters, it's become, the laws of Yichud, actually, people should really be prevalent and proficient in it, because it happens a lot. Certain babysitters, So any woman that is forbidden to have sexual relations with, it's forbidden to be alone with her. That was the whole sota, problem of the sota, right? Her husband saw that his wife was being alone, and he thought that she was adulterer. Now, there was no cameras, but Hashem had the ultimate test. If she ended up actually being alone and having committed adultery, so she blows up. That was last week's parasha. But according to halacha, one has to prevent it, right? An ounce of prevention is the best medicine.
Who's obligated to prevent it, though?
So we're going to go. So it says whether the girl is very young, over 3 years old, or very old, 90 years old. It's if she's Jewish, it's from Torah law, like a married woman. The even a woman that is asur to be together with her from Isur Lav, like Mamzeret, that's also we paskin. The Sfaradim, it's from Torah law. And people don't fail to realize that a woman that's a nida, most women, once they're bat mitzvah, it's a nida. So it's a Torah prohibition to be alone with her in the same room, in the same area.
People's wives are nida.
No, so it's that's an exception to the rule. It's okay to be alone with your wife that's a nida.
Why?
But
well, I mean,
because that's we learn from a pasuk. Chazal, it's a halacha l'meshivasina suga b'shoshanim. They know that since she's going to be permitted to you after a week or 2, whatever, 10, 12 days, whatever.
So it's the only case where it's permitted, or other cases?
Yeah, there's other heterim, like if a woman, her husband's in the city and she's afraid he's going to come. That's above the scope of this specific shir. But one of the main ways to prevent it is to open the door. Now, do you have to open the door? Can it be unlocked? But I'm going to get there very soon. But something to keep in mind is, like, if people are going out, right? Haredi, very frum girl and boy, 99.9% of our girls, once they hit 13, 12, bat mitzvah, or 13 years old, they're nida. They never went to the mikveh. And to be secluded with them is not an isur de rabbanan, it's an isur what? De oraita, min ha-Torah, from Torah law.
Where do you see that?
I'm sorry?
Where do you see that from Torah? Is Doraita?
From the Sota. We actually learned from the Sota. Right?
She's not married. The Sota's married, though.
No, because in the ancient times, the poskim learn it. It's actually machlekes. To some people, it's a machlekes ha-poskim, but the majority of poskim hold that Anida is the oraita. Because if you end up sleeping with her, it's like because Isser Nida, especially according to the Rambam, is Yarek Val Yavar. You know that. The same way you have to sacrifice your life and like get shot and not agree to sleep with a married woman is the same thing with a nida. That's how we paskin like the Rambam. That's the last laws of Hilchot Nida and Shulchan Aruch. So it would make sense that since it's such a severe sin, right? Your wife is exception to the rule. Right. Now, just some basic historical notes. We just said in the Mesilas Yesharim class that David had the hardest life of anybody. So, King David, one of his children, raped his half-sister, Amnon to Tamar. So King David came thousands of years ago, made a decree in his rabbinical court and said, even a single woman, really, if a single man sleeps with a single woman, it's really not, and she's not a nida, right? She went to the mikveh, because women used to go at that time, because they wanted to make sure their food is, tahor.
You mean like tithes or something like that?
Yeah. Or they wanted to give the food to the kohen, so right. If they touch it, it's going to get down time. So women always used to, all women used to. So it said, but David HaMelech, what David HaMelech did was very interestingly, said, you know what? It's such a, how could a brother rape his own sister? Okay, was this from a different mother?
Right.
So he said, even single people can't be alone. And then during the time of Hillel and Shammai, based on what happened, that a lot of Jews, at the time of Hanukkah and the time of Ezra, they were sleeping with non-Jewish women. So the Bet Din of Hillel, the famous Hillel, right, that we all are halal, and his colleague and comrade, that was, they always used to argue Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, but they did agree upon this, Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, that it's even forbidden to be alone with a goy. Because the Bet Din of Hashmonah, he said somebody that sleeps with a goy is like he slept with a nida and he gets karet midirabanan, because it's a very, severe problem. Now, I just want to say fascinating idea.
I thought it was always like something like animals like that. Not either. Your dog.
No. The base thing. What happened? The Hellenist Jews, right? A lot of Jews. You had a lot of Jews. A high percentage of Jews had become Hellenist, like accepted the culture and the gods, Chas v'Shalom, and everything like Greek.
The Greek culture. Yeah.
They even wanted to
write the Torah in Greek.
No. They even did the most sinister thing. They wanted to take back their Brit Milah to show that they weren't Brit.
Oh wow.
It says in Pirkei Avot, you lose your Olam Haba if you do that.
Right.
Now the issue over there is that the Bet Din of Hashmonah, whatever the Bet Din here downstairs says, upstairs they also agree. So they said somebody that sleeps with a Goya, since it becomes so prevalent, they made a gezerah that he gets a lot of different spiritual impurities. It's like he gets karet, his soul's going to get cut off, he's going to he's being with a nida and a shifcha and an eved. And actually, Rabbi Netaneli, remember when my father was sick, we used to stay up the whole night and do tikkunim.
Yeah.
So the Ben Ish Chai brings in his Lashon Chachamim, it's actually a scary thing. The Ben Ish Chai has this whole book, how to rectify certain sins, right? How many times you have to fast and do this and X, Y, and Z. Actually, God forbid, if a person had slept with a married woman, he has to do so and so many fasts. It's almost identical to sleeping with a non-Jew.
If you didn't know she was married?
Yeah.
Even
if she did, okay, listen. That's why we're learning these halachot.
You can do tshuva from that?
Yeah, you could.
Do tshuva from that kind of stuff?
Yeah, but this is what I want to tell you, Kabbalistically, yeah. You could do tshuva on anything. Even if you kill somebody, you could do tshuva. As long as you're alive, you could do tshuva. Even, that's the whole thing of the Gemara and Chagiga. Even if a bat kol comes...
Someone's death, you can't...
You always could do tshuva.
If someone senses death in the Torah doesn't say, oh, you can
no.
leave him to life.
If he does tshuva, the law is the law, because they have to have a civil...
Oh, it's spiritual, just forgiveness from Hashem, you mean? Not...
To get to Olam Haba, right?
Okay.
This world is only 70, 80... Okay. We were talking about eternal issues.
Okay.
So, but what I'm trying to bring out about because we're living in a very dangerous society nowadays, and people have difficulty getting married. I just want to bring out that Kabbalistically, the tikkun, how to rectify the sin of a married woman or a nida is almost, it's in some things it's even more fast to sleep with a goyisha woman. Because spiritually, it's like you're made for Brisa Shel Avraham Avinu. And I just want to bring out, let me just bring out this point. Now, why is it so important to learn these halachot? I want to bring out one fact. Many studies have been done, and the vast majority of people in the modern day world, 21st century, that do adultery, do it with somebody in their workplace, either their secretary, co-worker, because a lot of times, like let's say in a CPA office, or people stay at late, and you know, it's a very unfortunate thing. We live in a workaholic society. We're very expensive. And people sometimes spend more time with their coworkers than even their own spouse. That's why it's very vigilant. One has to be very vigilant. And I want to recommend a wonderful book that I just bought. It's called The Laws of Yichud. It's based on the rulings of Rav Shraga Kalus. He did amazing, and it's written by Rabbi Solansky. I highly recommend it.
So let's say you have two religious people, co-workers. Whose responsibility is it to ensure the law?
Both of them, but the man is the melech, the man.
He's the one responsible.
Yeah. It's a very big mitzvah to learn these halachos. And for example, I'll just tell you one thing. The Rav of Baltimore, Rabbi Heinemann, that spoke in front of 25,000 people in Wells Fargo Center a few days ago, or Rosh Hashiva Zatzal, my Rosh Hashiva of Weinberg, said, like, for example, with your secretary, you shouldn't ever call, it should be a very cold relationship. It shouldn't be like a lovey-dovey relationship. As we say in Pirkei Avot, it says, Al tarbesh sicha, don't talk too much schmoozing, im ha'isha. So he said, Rosh Hashiva Zatzal said, you should never call your secretary by your first name. Always Mrs. Cohen, Mrs. Levy. Right. You know, hands off, me and you, your thing. He says, you may think I'm going too far. Oh, Rabbi, you know. Right. You know, he says, you don't get the shalas of mamzerut, of bastards. Because, so I'm saying, this is a very important, crucial thing to understand, that Sotah is a very, very long Gemara, and there's a long Mishnah, and a long part of the Torah is devoted to it, because according to the Zohar, the strongest urgency in the world, you know, power and passion a person has after eating and drinking is, and I want to bring out another thing that I believe, and I think that's so important, that it's such a wonderful thing to be exposed to the Israeli religious society, because they are not political, like, you know. So I saw something there written that was very interesting. There's this whole organization in Israel, and it makes a lot of sense, because I talked to one of the people that was involved. He said that historically speaking, for thousands of years, men and women hardly used to work, never were co-workers. It wasn't considered modest, which means in an Israeli Haredi world, many men, their secretary will be also a man. You understand? Wow. But what the reasons why I wanted to specifically talk about this specific topic is that, like in Yeshiva Mir, where I learned, the biggest yeshiva in the world, there are no female secretaries. And there was a whole pamphlet and a whole organization that tries to promote this. Women should work with women, men shouldn't work with women. Perhaps there's another time where we could get into the other issue of how many Israeli poskim hold that women, as long as the gynecologist is just as good as a female gynecologist is just as proficient and professional and educated as a male, right? Women should see women, men should see. You understand? There's heterim for, but in our modern world where everybody's commingled, right?
Speaking of the modern world, this gave all this.
If ever.
What about the guys and guys?
That's above the scope of it. Everybody was asking me that the night of Shavuot. It's not. There is no law of.
I don't know which way this guy swings. I don't know.
You have to be careful. You have to be, especially with goyim.
I mean, maybe he's.
Josh, doctor. The halacha is with goyim. You have to be careful, because the guy may rape. Especially, it's brought down in the Gemara that chas v'shalom you should leave children with them.
What I'm saying is that,
Like if you want to get a male tutor for your child, you have to be very careful because they're known chas v'shalom to sodomize them chas v'shalom. So that's above way. We don't want to go that. We want to stay rooted in our sheer here.
The general question is if you're supposed to be not secluded people who are not allowed to sleep with. Obviously,
man and man is not a problem. So you're right.
It's also not allowed though.
No, you're allowed to be alone with men.
But it's also for a relationship if that one man is.
It's brought down in Chazal. It's brought down in Chazal that Klal Yisrael, the Jews don't have such a Yetzirah, such an urge.
Mm-hmm.
So the scope of this specific shiur, and what's brought down in the Shulchan Aruch, we have to write a new Shulchan Aruch for this new Sodom and Amorah.
Right.
Yeah. No, I'm not denying it.
I mean,
one has to use common sense, which is not too common anymore. But halachically speaking, regarding this sugya, Yichud is between the opposite sex. Now, if you find somebody that is attracted to the same sex and you don't, it would make sense that you should maybe follow the same halachot and then be alone with him. You're afraid he may make advances to you, or especially to children, or you never know. But what I wanted to go into is there's many situations where this comes up. For example, with your secretary, with your coworker that's female. Perfect case. You're in college, you're in medical school, you have to do an exam, you have to do a project together, right? You have to study together. I mean, you have a babysitter, right? Or a maid that's cleaning your house, and you're alone at home. Your office isn't at home. You're alone, right? If one becomes aware, there's many halachot. Now, how do you avoid it? So, the rest of this year is going to just be devoted to this. There's something called in Shulchan Aruch. The Gemara teaches us in Kiddushin, page 81, that in order to circumvent this problem of not being secluded, you could open the door to the public eye. Then you're not alone, right? Because the whole block party, everybody could come in. So since there's no exclusivity between you and her, right? So in such a case, it would be permitted to be alone. Because you're not really alone, right? The door is open. Now, this is called in halachic terms Pesach Pasuach. The door is open. Now, we want to exactly understand, there's a fascinating machlokus, what this exactly means. Now, here's the first opinion. And Rav Moshe Feinstein, actually, which we're talking about, has a fascinating opinion on this. But one of the greatest Talmudic scholars of the last 200-300 years is Rabbi Kiva Eger. And another one, who's one of my favorite, Acharonim, the base mayor, based on a Rashba, one of the great Sephardic Gedolim. There's a machlekes in the Achronim how to understand the Rashba. They learn that, okay, it means what it says and says what it means, which means you need to literally open the door and it has to be wide open. And not only that, Rabbi Kiva Eger holds, additionally, not only does the door have to be open, making the interior visible, but you need to be in clear sight of the door. So you need to sit in front of the door. So people will see you. Only then is it considered that, you're not alone with her, because you're basically sitting in front of the front door of the house. Anybody could see you, and that would prevent you.
If it's a guy's responsibility, and that may...
No, it's not necessarily the woman.
No.
If the man is a Amma Ha'aretz, what I'm trying to say is usually men have the chiyuv of Talmud Torah.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Whoever's aware of the halachot.
If the man is learning...
If anything, we have Baruch Hashem many Nashim Sadkaniyot.
If,
Some people are not with the program. Sometimes, a lot of times, men are ignorance is bliss. But whoever is with the program should make the initiative to open the door. Now, by the way, you have to also understand that the halachot become, as a matter of practicality, and it's brought down in halacha, people that you're very chas v'shalom, not chas v'shalom, but practically speaking, very comfortable with. It's like your cousin, it's like your secretary. You have to even be more vigilant, right? Because a stranger person is not going to be somebody that's hanky-panky is going to happen, but somebody that you're very comfortable with because you're not ashamed of,
right.
and you have a relationship with. That's where, God forbid.
My question is, let's say you have a married man who's a Talmud, whatever.
Yeah.
And the maid is so unattractive to you, is repulsed by her. Is he really going to say, I have to open the door because I'm worried about
No, we'll see. Then you could be more makel. If it's okay, so you also have to understand. Always, that's why I gave the introduction. There's 3 levels, right? The way Rav Scheinberg and Rav Ovadia bring it is, if the Yichud is deoraita, or in my opinion, if the Yichud is somebody that you're attracted to, you really think it's a danger, right? You're alone.
Right.
Then you should perhaps be like very machmir, be out in the open, go sit in the yard.
Right.
LA, always the weather is good, or sit in front of the front door of the house. Okay. Keep it completely open, right? Now, so a classic example of that brought down in this sefer is, if one is secluded in a house with a cleaning lady, if he stands in the view of the outside, there is no isur. So even, it could perhaps be that you don't need to stand in front of the front door if the front door is open and you stand, like let's say the window of the house is also, everybody could see inside and you're standing in full view of what's people passing by, right? Obviously the bedroom would not be a good place to be in this case, right? So the Beis Shlomo, so you have 3 great acharonim, the Beis Meir, Rabbi Akiva Eiger, which, and they hold that it means what it says what it means. Open door means completely open the doors and stand in front of it. And the Beis Shlomo also holds that. So according to this understanding, it's a bit difficult because, for safety, if a place is not safe or you want to be, it's very uncomfortable. It's very hard. One of the great students of the Chazon Ish, the Shevet HaLevi, the Bnei Brak Posek of Beis Meir, holds like this. Rav Wosner says we should be machmer like this, and we should follow the opinion of Rabbi Akiva Eiger. Here's a more lenient opinion. The Pischei Tshuva brings the Radvaz and the Binyan Sion that they say no. It doesn't mean that you have to open the door totally wide open. They argue on Rabbi Akiva Eiger. It's a different opinion. It says as long as the door is unlocked and anybody could get in, that means you don't have any privacy. And they understand the Talmudic source from the Rashba, also from the medieval sources, in a different way. And based on this version of the text, they have a different girsa on the Rashba, right? They have a different version of his text that says that as long as, even if the door is totally closed but unlocked, which means somebody could just,
But their hair entails you lock first.
Right. So I'm gonna do. So there's a fascinating of Yaakov Kamenetsky on this. So according to them, you don't need to lock the door. You just, it's very simple. Unlock the door. You have your, right. You're not. It's much more convenient according to these poskim, right? It's not like a big deal. Okay, you unlock your door, and you should be. And the psychological deterrent here is that, okay, people are uncomfortable if anybody could just come right in. Now, the Emes LeYaakov of Yaakov Kamenetsky and the Minchas Chinuch, the chief posek of the Eda Hareda, they say that this depends on the society. Which means, let's say you have a neighbor that always you're so friendly with, you're buddy with, he comes into your house, knocks and comes in, and right? But let's say you live in a society like America, it's not accepted to just walk into people's houses. So how's this going to be a deterrent? So if you live somewhere where people will not walk in unannounced, so it depends on the culture. Maybe in Iran or Israel they would, because people live in apartments. Let's say the guy's living on the top of Bel Air, Mulholland. Ain't nobody going to be walking into that estate unannounced.
Yeah, even if the door.
Yeah, even if
the door's open.
Okay, so the door open.
There's still going to be a front gate.
Yeah, so that's another problem. The post can deal with that actually.
Really?
I saw that Rav Mazuz actually deals with that. He says it's still okay if you're not, as long as the front door is open, it's open. Listen, if you're really worried, listen, you always have the option of leaving.
Right.
But the issue over here is that in most places in the United States of America, most Western cultures, it's totally unacceptable.
Open the door.
A woman in Florida was just not. I mean, so a lot of people that are gun carriers, like, you know, people there's a lot of cases recently in the news. People shot each other because crazy stand your ground.
Delivery,
People drove into people's driveway and they shot him. So it's a crazy society we're living in. You know, even if somebody's your friend and neighbor, most of the time it's not accepted. So you really can't use this heter in such societies, because unlocked. Because what's the idea? It's unlocked and the person's going to come in, but here you know the person's not going to come in and disturb you. Yeah. So how's it going to help? So it's unclear. According to the above, it seems that there's almost no heter of Pesach Pasuach for a closed unlocked door in today's day and age. And the Shulchan Aruch doesn't, and the thing is also, the issue is the Shulchan Aruch doesn't also understand that the Maran, Bet Yosef, the Shulchan Aruch doesn't say it depends on the locale.
But that's still murder. If someone kills someone in the front yard, it hasn't entered the property, it hasn't entered his house, it's still considered murder. That's not considered self-defense. Well,
you're living crazy. Depends, state laws are, yeah, of course it's murder, but you know, you have some fanatical. What I'm saying is, especially now, especially if you go into these like gun touting states, people are very hesitant to go into people's private property. Now, even if the guy's your friend and your neighbor.
I say in Canada, everyone has a gun and all the doors are unlocked.
See, no, you also have to understand.
Yeah.
Let's say, like, you have certain families where you live right across your mother-in-law, or you live somebody. It depends on the situation. According to these post-game, listen, if you have people that will just knock and walk into your door, so that's fine, right? You could, but if you, most of the places it's not such a good idea. But then there's a third opinion. There's the opinion of the Chazon Ish, which could come in handy. The Chazon Ish says, he argues. It's brought down in the Devar Halacha, chapter 3. Hara said they bring down in the name of the Chazon Ish that he explains that it's a psychological thing. Are there crazy people or people that don't have common sense that would rudely walk into the house if it's unlocked? Yeah. So he says that's enough of a mental deterrent. A wild person.
You can do what you're doing too. Live broadcast.
Right? A wild. By the way, there's another heter to have it recorded, and if somebody else is looking, then you're not alone, because, you know, everybody has cameras nowadays. Right. Cost a few $100, ring, not even 100. And if somebody's watching, that could be perhaps another heter. Like a doctor asked me the night of Shavuot, by the way. It says, like, if I'm alone with a patient, it's, unless you're a psychologist and you lock the door, but like in a doctor, it's not. Also, you have to define, it has to be secluded, which means if your secretary or random employee could walk in and disturb you, right? And it's and most of those doors don't lock. You know what I mean? Right. So that's the opinion of the Chazon Ish. According to the opinion of the Chazon Ish, since potentially a crazy wild man could walk in, he holds that's enough of a barrier to allow you to what? Use the heter. Now we go to Rav Moshe Feinstein. Rav Moshe Feinstein even entertained something even more fascinating. He says he says that even if the door's locked, you could use say that it's petach patuach l'rishus harabim. How is that? Now, this is a fascinating Rav Moshe Feinstein. Ga'inus. He says that in any situation, and you'll see it's nogay in the diamond district, like, you know how retail theft is becoming.
Right.
Let's say you have a diamond store, a certain very high-end retail store, and you just don't want thieves to come in.
Right.
So it's a fascinating Rav Moshe Feinstein. Rav Moshe Feinstein says like this. If you want to look at the Rav Moshe Feinstein, it's in Even Ezer, volume 4, 65, subtitle 4. Rav Moshe says, what's the idea? That people will enter and disrupt you, God forbid, and therefore you're psychologically afraid to engage in hanky-panky. Now, Rav Moshe says, anytime if somebody knocks, and 99 out of 100 times you would have to open the door, then he says perhaps one could be lenient, and even if the door is locked, it's not considered Pesach Psuach L'Rishus Harabim. Because you're not going to get engaged in sin, because you know that you're going to have to open the door, and if you get disturbed, it's like the guy could come in. But he says, however, in a situation where it's in your private residence, or in a situation where you could ignore the guy, right? Then of course you would have to. He holds, actually, Rav Moshe holds like the first opinion, that he said it would make sense that one actually totally keeps the door open, right? So here's a fascinating potential application of Rav Moshe's halacha, though. He says, let's say a storefront which regularly receives customers, and whatever, for security reasons, he doesn't want bums and thieves walking in. He wants to see the guys in a suit and a tie, he doesn't want undesirables just walking, and that it's in the billions of dollars, the thieves, especially in San Francisco, and right? So he wants Farad Adam Doroses Sabi, honorable, reliable people to walk into his thing. So he basically says that you're going to get terrible Yelp reviews and you're going to lose business, right? Uh-huh. If people could see that you're behind the door, right? If people knock and you're open for business, you have an open sign, they're going to get mad, right? There's repercussions. You're forced to open the door if somebody continues like. So he says that's a fascinating case that perhaps Rav Moshe Feinstein's psak would apply. You understand? So it depends. However, in a case of a money changer or jewelry store, the store is often open and one can see the people inside, and therefore one will answer the knocking door, right? Because the guy is expecting to get served. So therefore, it's okay. So now so we have all these opinions, right? So just to review. Opinion number 1 is you have to totally open the door and be within the side of the door or the window. Like you have to be
your window display.
Yeah, your window display.
Yeah.
You have to be, so that means you're not alone. Then we have a psak that just unlock the door. But the problem with that is, in many societies, how's that going to help anything? The door is unlocked, nobody's going to walk in. Then you have the third opinion, Chazon Ish. Then you have Moshe Feinstein, which is fascinating. Is that, like he says, even lock it, but even if it's locked, but if potentially it's a situation where people are going to disturb you and you have to open the door, right? Yeah. Then you could be Mako. Now the Rav Scheinberg says that if the person you're being alone with is like a Nida or a married woman, or I would even add to this, she's a person that we said most adultery, God forbid, happens with people that you're very co-worker. Perhaps you should be, he says the right thing is to go and, go with the hard line opinion of the Shevet HaLevi, open the door totally. Leave the door wide open. Now, Rav Scheinberg holds, actually, that if it's not possible, you could even leave the door ajar. He personally holds that if it's not really possible for whatever reason, maybe the company policy or whatever, or it's cold, if you leave it open, the whole place is going to be freezing. Even if you leave it ajar, perhaps it's the same thing. He holds that's enough. The issue over here is that he brings from one of the great poskim, the Aruch HaShulchan. He explains that if the door is left ajar, it invites others to walk in, and one could therefore be lenient. Now, what does the Aruch HaShulchan write? The Aruch HaShulchan writes that an unlocked door is prohibited. The psak seems to be somewhere in between the above opinions, like what we find in the Aruch HaShulchan. He writes that if the door is closed but unlocked, there is no isur b'di'evet. So, which means that before the Mishnah Berurah came along, I was actually learning it the whole day with Rabbi Eli. The Aruch HaShulchan is one of the big poskim, acharonim, and he wrote on the entire Shulchan Aruch. He says that it seems from him that he also writes that, base case scenario, leave the door open, but it seems to say that he's applying if one should not rely on this l'chatchila, but one in such a situation there is room to be lenient, which means certain situations, for whatever reason, it's hard to leave the door wide open. So try to leave it ajar. Rav Sternbach, the great posek from Harnof, he says another very good thing. He says that perhaps one can leave the door unlocked and hang up a sign that everybody is come right in. Yeah. So he writes that. So in summary, if the door is locked, seclusion is prohibited. In cases when one expects people to knock on the door and would not let the knocking go unanswered, there is room for leniency. That's Rav Moshe Feinstein. If the door is wide open, then according to everybody, there's no seclusion. If you're within sight of the door or the window, people see what's going on and they can just come out right in. Right? If the door is left ajar, one may be lenient. And in all cases, certainly one can be lenient if those inside are in view of the outside, right? You also have to understand, another part of this whole thing is that if people are seeing what's going on in the house and the door is on ajar, if the door is unlocked but closed, the Aruch HaShulchan says, in the end of the day, that sometimes it's a freezing cold, you can't leave the door open. Then you have the Aruch HaShulchan that says b'di'evet, there is room to be lenient in cases of need. In cases of only potential isur d'Rabbanan, there is even more room to be lenient when the door is unlocked but closed. So may Hashem help us to be pure, to realize that this is a serious issue, and there should only be kosher relationships between all of the nation of Israel. Amen.
Amen.